Said, hello everybody. My name is Impatient, and yeah, today we're gonna be talking about how to fix Titanfall 2. Oh baby, it's a question every Titanfall player has probably come up with an answer with, but my answer is the most bestest, definitely smartest, greatest of all time, easy wins, best Chungus answer. Okay, this is the way to fix Titanfall. Also, this isn't actually a meme video. I'm gonna keep this relatively serious. We're on Glitch right now to talk about it. So, you know, a lot of people have posited different ways to fix Titanfall. You can fix it by, you know, nerfing some Titans. You can fix it by nerfing some weapons. You can fix it by adding more content. Now, I do think this game doesn't have enough content, but what I will say is I don't think that nerfing any of the guns or buffing any of the guns or nerfing any of the Titans are actually what we need in Titanfall. I don't think that's what makes the game unfun to play. I don't think those are the problems with the game. I actually think a much bigger problem is map design. In fact, I would go so far as to say that every problem that is not related to matchmaking quality in this game is directly tied to map design. Now, I will talk to you about why I think that's the case, and why I think map design is so important in Titanfall, and why I think that it just ain't it for most of the game. Now, you might be thinking though, but all of my favorite YouTubers said that it's the Spitfire, that it's the G2, that it's a lack of personal responsibility, that players should take greater ownership of how they interact with others in the game and, you know, play accordingly. And to that I would say, we're literally playing a piece of entertainment media. Saying to somebody, don't play Spitfire, it's unfair, or don't play Ronin, don't play Monarch, don't play Tone, it's unfair, it's sort of like saying to somebody reading a mystery novel that they shouldn't read one of the chapters because it gives away a clue about who the killer is, and everyone else who read the book didn't read that chapter. Like, it's just nonsense. This is a entertainment media. This is something we play to have fun. And players should be expected to try to maximize their own fun. And if they do that via Spitfire, so be it. The Spitfire and G2 and, you know, other strong weapons serve a lot of important functions, such as being really good ease-of-use weapons for really young and really old players so that more people have access to the game. If you like Titanfall, you should want the most people as possible to be playing it. But that's kind of the end of the rant on why I don't think the problem is the weapons. Actually, no it isn't. The other thing I want to say is I think some people like to think about weapons as the solution because if it were the solution, it'd be a lot easier than a map design solution. Frankly, you know, there is no variable for how good a map is. There's no slider that a Respawn dev could fix. However, you can argue that, you know, if you could prove that the Spitfire or the G2 is the root of all evil in the game, then, you know, nerfing their damage or changing their recoil patterns could conceivably fix the game. But I just don't think that those are the problem. And I think we're looking for an easy solution. We want the Respawn devs to just change a slider. But, you know, as much as Respawn was pretty lazy in throwing this game together and EA and overseeing it, they probably play-tested the weapons, and quite frankly, I do trust them to make weapons that are good. However, that being said, maps don't really get play-tested like that. Once a map is made, it's really hard to just scrap it. It's more work, and it's much harder to fix problems. And so, my hypothesis is that crappy maps get turned into maps that go into the game. I don't think crappy guns make it to the end product, but I do think crappy maps do. But we're on Glitch, which is a entirely non-crappy map. Also, I'm playing in real time, so the reason this isn't like smooth movement or anything, because this isn't pre-recorded footage, I need to like show you things about Glitch here. But anyway, I thought that basically for this video, what I want to talk about is why is Glitch so good, and why is every other map so bad? Now, I do want to say real quick, this is from a very pilot-centric perspective. One of the maps I will not be talking about is Boomtown. Because even though I don't like Boomtown, and I think Boomtown has a lot of problems, I know that Boomtown as a map is pretty well liked by Titan mains. Same for Angel City. So I'm not going to like hound after them and talk about all the reasons I hate them. But there are some maps that are pretty much unilaterally hated by new players and competitive players alike, and I wanted to talk about why some of them miss the mark and how, if there is a Titanfall 3 or a game that wants to be like Titanfall, they can fix some of these problems. So the first thing that I want to say is that when we think about the G2 and Spitfire, we don't actually think about their damage potential because they're not really high damage potential guns. They have line of sight advantage. So this is a little wooden beam. Look at it, love it, live it, lifestyle, all that good stuff. This is a wooden beam. This is about the longest sight line you can have on Glitch. Now, this is a pretty long sight line. That Thunderbolt is going to travel pretty damn far. It travels into the other side of mid. We have really good line of sight on our side of mid. We can see a little bit of the people coming over here. In CTF, this little area would matter as well. And we can look at Donut. All perfectly good, perfectly fine. However, there's something interesting, because this is really the only long line of sight on the entire map. Think about that for a second. The only long line of sight. Oh, and we can see over rafters. We'll talk about rafters in a second, but this is the only long line of sight. Now, some of you have probably seen Spitfire and G2 campers sit on this very beam and beam you, right? So how do we... Why am I okay with this, but not with other long lines of sight in other maps? Because that is the problem, right? I don't think the problem is the G2 or the Spitfire. I think the problem is line of sight problems. This is a very tall map where you're mostly playing on the ground, and so you don't really have long lines of sight most of the time. You have some lines of sight down mid, but they're obscured by cover and, you know, really easy access to walls. So let's take this as what is, largely speaking, the longest line of sight on Glitch. Why is this okay? Well, it's okay because it's really unsafe. One, it's really hard to move around on it. If you fall off, a good player is pushing up through here, and all of a sudden, they're on top of you. By the time you've remantled, you've given up ground. I actually fell. Oh my gosh, I actually fell. So unprofessional. So unprofessional. But you have... I'm not going to edit this out. This is my curse. Anyway, you fell, you've given up time, so it's very hard to move well on this beam. However, you can move while crouched, but, you know, it's slow. But the other reason I like it is from here to here, you don't actually have that much movable space. And most people don't sit crouched against this corner, and they don't sit perched out here. They sit somewhere here. Most Spitfire campers do. The reason that makes this an acceptable long line of sight is the following. Oh, I actually don't have the right weapons. Just assume I shot them with a charge rifle. Most players use the charge rifle, or they use a gun that is pretty long range. They use, you know, a wingman, they use a Kraber, they use any of the SMGs are good enough for that, any of the ARs. Basically, they use something that can punish a player for standing perfectly still. And that is sort of what that beam forces you to do. A long line of sight that forces you to stand perfectly still. So, even though there are long lines of sight that can see you coming from a long ways away, you have something they don't, which is the ability to move without fundamentally giving up your position, right? So that's one of the things that's really good about Glitch, is it penalizes you for not playing with long-range weapons, but it penalizes you for trying to take excessively long lines of sight by making you a sitting duck. But that's not the only reason Glitch is a good map. Certainly part of it is that Glitch is geometrically designed. It feels good to move on. It's got flat walls. You know, it's built to be a, you know, beautiful, tranquil pilot simulator. Of course it would feel good to move on. Some other maps feel good to move on. Complex has a lot of smooth surfaces that make it very easy to move on, especially in the main corridor. But I would never consider Complex a good map. So why is that? Well, there are two more things that make Glitch an incredibly good map, and there are two more lessons that a lot of the other maps can learn from Glitch. The first is the way that they design interiors. Interiors are important in Titanfall, whether we like it or not. They're how you break up the monotony of big open fields. They act as a way of breaking up those long lines of sight, and they're crucial if you want to make a really good feeling map, right? However, in maps like War Games, and to a lesser extent maps like Homestead and Exoplanet, You have these really cramped rooms. You've got these really clustered rooms. They're rooms that don't allow for a lot of movement. They're not very big, and they're certainly not very open. Glitch, on the other hand, takes basically the opposite approach. It makes these big open rooms. There's not a lot of cover in here because you don't actually need cover in a room. The room is the cover from whoever you're shooting at. If somebody's over here, back into the room, this is my cover. And if we're fighting in rooms, we don't want them to just be a melee fest. We don't want them to just be, you know, whoever can spam their R3 the fastest. We want open rooms that allow for a lot more, you know, ease of movement and ease of shooting. We want it to be skill-based, right? We want rooms to be skill-based while still functioning as cover from the outside world. And I think Glitch exemplifies that beautifully. And then we get to what I think is actually the most important thing that Glitch does, that not that no other map does, that no map does nearly as well. In most maps, in most matches, you don't have a Spitfire camper. You don't have a G2 camper. You don't even have a Carbine camper most of the time. People are mobile, they're playing, they're doing whatever, right? But what do you always have? You always will have Titans. And depending on the map, those Titans can ruin the match. If you don't get into your Titan immediately, wow, I'm like bad with the Wingman Elite. Ignore that. This is why we don't shoot grunts during the essay videos. But, you know, if you don't get your Titan immediately and drop it, Titans are going to trounce you on most maps. But not on Glitch. Why is that? Well, it's because Glitch has very clearly delineated altitudes. For example, basically, there's 3 altitudes you can stay at on Glitch. We'll go from the top down. The first, the highest, is coming off of the zip, sitting near Rafters. Now, Rafters is out of bounds, but it's the most widely used out of bounds area in the game, and most good players will spend a lot of time up here. Just running across, it's the fastest way to get between A and B on Glitch. You can even go over roofs like this. That's the highest altitude, right? There, you're basically safe from any Titans. Now, not every map needs to have that. You don't need a perfect safe zone from Titans. But it's nice that Glitch has it, because this place is an out-of-bounds area. It's not easily accessible to players most of the time, but it is a nice safe space to have, so that Titans aren't a constant pain in your side. And then we come down to kind of the middle altitude. This is normal, what we would think of as normal Glitch. This is, we're not on the ground, we're on tile, we're running through walls. We can literally go and never touch the lowest part of Glitch. And that gets to kind of my main point about Titans, which is that the reason most people, or at least I, don't like Titans are not that Titans are too strong or that there's some fundamental flaw in how Titan v Titan works. It's that Titan v Pilot is so dominated by Titan melees. Think of a map like Homestead, which is a map that I think is objectively terrible. In that map, most of your pilot kills as a Titan will probably come from melees, because so many pilots have to move into you as they get from one elevated area to the other. There's no walls connecting the various important points on Homestead. The Titans and the pilots occupy the same altitude. It's not about your gun anymore. It's about whether or not you're running dash core and how fast you can spam your melee, right? I know that's a bit hyperbolic, but you know what I mean. One of the nice things about Glitch is Titans sit here. They sit here. They sit here. They don't sit up here. They can't get up these stairs. They can't get into these rooms. They can look into the rooms. In CTF, you can, bomb the flags and whatever as Scorch, various things. But you can always move above the head of a Titan if you want during any Glitch attrition match. And that is powerful, because it means that you can continue to have fun as a pilot and not be pestered by Titans and not continually have to go back to spawn as a pilot from Titans. I think that that's powerful, and I think that people don't give enough credit to, first, how bad the map design is for every other map, and 2, just how big of a problem the Titan versus pilot dynamic is. Most people play this game for one or the other. Titan mains don't like pilots pestering their Titan. And pilot mains certainly don't like Titans meleeing them out of the sky. So we've looked at glitch. So how do we extrapolate this to other maps? Well, I don't have the fixes immediately. I don't know how we fix Titanfall maps. I don't know how we make Titanfall maps better. But I do know some maps that have some clear problems. We're going to back out. I'm really excited. So, I think there are 3 maps that illustrate this really well. And we're actually going to go to Homestead to talk about them. Well, Homestead is the one we'll spend time in, but the other 2 are Colony and Blackwater, which I think are all very similar maps for a couple of reasons. But we'll talk about why these maps sometimes feel really bad to play on, and like when you get steamrolled on these maps, it ruins the play experience. Ruins the play experience. Anytime now, again. Anytime. I'm not doing a video or anything. There we go. All right. So as we drop in, one thing you'll notice immediately is that you can see the whole map from where you spawn. Now, there is a tower that is obstructing the middle of the map. And you might be thinking, well, Impatient, that fixes your sightline problems. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. This guy can see me. 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 That's 4 lines of sight that are all like, what, 70, 80 meters long? I mean, this is over 100 meters long. Spitfire and G2 are built for that. Kraber's built for that. Tons of weapons in this game can still work out at that range, but a lot of them can't. And we're penalizing short-range players for basically playing on Homestead. So you have these huge lines of sight. You also do have cramped buildings as well. You've got really cramped buildings that are hard to play, and it's really hard to play in silos. It's really hard to play in these buildings. There's not a lot of room to maneuver. You've got all this junk lying around. You don't need cover inside buildings. That's not really what buildings are for in Titanfall. But then we can go to the just horrendous problem with all of this. This place. This is the line of sight problem in a nutshell. If this is not poor map design, I don't know what is. But in fact, there's actually something even more egregious. Slopes. Slopes that make it so that even in the protected elevated areas, Titans still have eye-level contact with you. So not only can they occupy themselves with what other Titans are doing, it's really, really easy for them to bully pilots. Not to mention the fact that you have to run through this nomad's land to get from one major elevated area to the other. This is literally bad Titanfall map design. This is a lane that a Ronin can camp, and it doesn't matter whether or not they're really using Ronin or any other Titan. They don't need to use their gun, because frankly, no matter what, you're always going to need to go from point A to point B in Titanfall. That's never going to change. And when you play on Homestead, there's always going to be a Titan who can sit right there and punish you for doing what the game wants you to do. That's not Ronin's fault. That's not the player's fault. That's not even your fault. It is 100% the fault of the map being designed this way. The fact that you have to move through the lowest possible area in order to reach important points. Now, 2 other maps that I think bear talking about in this vein are Blackwater and Colony. Colony doesn't have quite as many problems as Homestead or Blackwater because the houses are a little bit higher up, and you can theoretically stay on the houses for most of it. However, I don't think that's really realistic, and a lot of the time you're going to have to drop down onto the floor. And when you drop down, I mean, you're in the same boat you were. The Titans are going to get you. Also, most of the Titan melees can reach a double jump higher than the houses. So if you're going from a house that's like there to here, and let's say you double jump over to get there, the Titan that's sitting here can just pop, and most of the time they can, you know, they can nab you. Now, Colony also has problems with like head glitching and stuff, but that's less of a Titanfall problem and more of a just like how okay are head glitches in modern FPS games thing. That's not really the point of this video, but Colony still has the same line of sight problems of having a ridiculous tower in the middle, houses that can see every other house on the map, and, you know, problems with Titan pilot dynamic. And then Blackwater is almost identical to Homestead. It's got a huge protrusion in the middle of the map that has line of sight on the rest of the map. It's got really clunky buildings that aren't actually spaced to give you cover, but are spaced more to just be places for campers to sit, because you can't really move around in them. They're really cluttered. You know, you can't shoot in them well. Also, again, Blackwater is made of that huge road that sits in the middle of it. You have to go down that road. Titans can just sit in that road and ruin your time as a pilot again. Now, Blackwater has one major difference from Homestead in that it has a ground level. But that ground level isn't where you really spawn, and it's definitely not where you play, because there's no buildings on it, and there's no cover on it. It's just sort of exists as a bailout area for Titans and pilots, which is nice, but it doesn't fix the fundamental flaw that you're forcing pilots to walk through melee range of Titans, and that you've built your map to punish players from going... Let me try that sentence again. You have punished players for trying to go from point A to point B. Also, this was a... Alright. So, those are 3 maps that I think kind of exemplify the problems, even though on their face, all 3 of them seem to be decent maps. But I think all 3 of them are actually pretty bad for the reasons I've just described. Except maybe Colony. Colony's probably, you know, you can probably say Colony's a pretty good map for various reasons, but I think it still shows the flaws with Titanfall's map design. So, what are the takeaways? First, there needs to be a much better division between where the pilots play and where the Titans play. Titans all have ranged guns. They can shoot up and down. They don't need to always be within melee distance of the pilots that they're fighting. Secondly, most maps probably need to have more buildings in them. Specifically, buildings that are really open inside. But those buildings do a great job of breaking up line of sight, adding more runnable walls, and just doing a good job of filling out the map. You don't end up with dumb nomads lands where you're trying to survive from a Spitfire who's up on the tower by hiding behind a box. I think we've all had this fight. This fight sucks. It is objectively bad. Anyway, those I think are the main takeaways. That's about all I have to say. I do truly believe that if those got fixed in another movement shooter, the movement shooter would have a fundamentally much more fun gameplay loop than Titanfall could ever hope to make. Because Titanfall is chained by its terrible line of sight problems and its Titan pilot dynamics. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Anyways, this was a one-take Andy, so there's a lot of, like, me screwing up, but also, this is just an opinion video. This isn't like a, you know, I'm trying to make a YouTube video to force into your recommended page. I just want there to be proof that someone has made these arguments, because I feel like even really good players pay so little mind to map design, and I feel like the longer we don't think about it, the longer we accept Titanfall as worse than it has to be. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Follow my Twitch or something, I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of it for me. Thank you, and you know, stay impatient.